As you can maybe see from everyone's comments, Pinot Noir does sort of attract people that like to live on the edge. And I have a father who likes to live on the edge. And his version of living on the edge may be giving you a tour in his vineyard, which is a mountain vineyard in his 69 Willys Jeep, driving about 40 miles an hour through some steep slopes when you think you're going to fall off the edge of the hill. But as a way to share like where we're at, I think this is neat, and I think, Eric, you did a great job of outlining the geography here. And so what we have here, my family's vineyard is a 1,300 feet elevation in the mountains of Monterey County. And what's significant about that is I think our vineyard really represents what we find in elevation for Pinot Noir. First of all, there are not a lot of vineyards at high elevation in California, and particularly on the coast. But due to all of our tectonic activity that Josh alluded to, another fault line that we have in our Santa Lucia mountain range, we're sitting on a mountain 15 miles from the coast at 1,000 feet. And what that does is really stresses the vines. You have grapevines that struggle in really shallow soils. We also have very granitic soils, so there's not a lot of organic matter. And at the same time, our fog line that Jenna was talking about, and Heidi, it comes in and sits about 1,000 feet. And we're often in the sunshine on really rugged soils, and we have a blanket of fog there. So the vines are working really hard, struggling. They develop a lot of structure and tannin in resistance to that. So you have wines with a lot of this character inherently in it. So a little bit of history in terms of my family and how we've come to farm this spot. My father planted this vineyard in 1982, but my family's been in this area on this same ranch and neighboring ranches since the early 1900s. We were dairy farmers originally. In 1951, when my grandfather got back from World War II service, he started farming vegetables on the valley floor. We still do this. And in 1982, it was my father, just about a passion for wine and collecting wine, eventually starting to make his own wine, decided that he wanted to plant grapes. And ultimately, they decided that growing lettuce wasn't living on the edge enough for him. So my grandparents had this cattle ranch up in the mountains. And this is a very small farming town. So the town of Gonzales, where I grew up, had about 5,000 people in it when I was young. Now it has 10,000 people. When my father presented the idea of going to the mountains and planting this vineyard, my grandparents and nor neighbors or anyone else in the area really believed that it could be done or that it should be attempted. So my father, driven by his absolute passion to do whatever he felt and believed in, he went there and planted this. And we talked some about rainfall. So average amount of rainfall for us in Monterey County is about 8 to 10 inches per year, which is very little. And, grapevines need more than that, especially in the summer. And there was no water in this mountain range, basically, when my father went to plant there. So he planted the vineyard and would drive a water truck from the vegetable farm on the valley floor up to the 1,400-foot elevation vineyard just to irrigate. And then his pursuit for finding water started, and he would drill wells. It took him 6 wells in this mountain range to finally be able to find a well that produced water. At this time, my grandparents, I think, were about to disown him. But the challenge in that also kind of informs a lot of our geology. So one of these wells that he found was at the highest point in our ranch at about 1,400 feet elevation. And it was hard to find a well driller that could attempt this because it was so rocky. So this one driller and the ultimate well that we have to supply water for our vineyard was about 7 feet of soil, and then he had to go through 400 feet of solid granite rock until he found a pocket of water that had enough pressure there to push water up and supply the vineyard. At that point, he planted more, and now we have about 35 acres of vines there. But what's interesting about our story with this well is that there were so many unsuccessful well attempts. And then it was later found out that water often backs up behind a fault line. And of course, being on a mountain, we're on a fault line, but that's sort of why we have this water there. and also is why we have such a diverse geological site. One thing really neat is in the Vinous maps, if you have the Santa Lucia Highlands one, and I have one at our table here inside, there's a call-out feature on our Pisoni vineyard, which was really interesting when we were exploring the soils in the region, because we have like 5 different soil types on our vineyard, which really builds in complexity and diversity for the vines. But I really feel it's my family's farming background that really, is a focus. And living in this spot, what we do sustainability-wise really builds in a focus to take care of this land and be able to farm the diversity of what we have in like a really dynamic mountainous site. Builds a lot of wine, a lot of structure, a lot of tannin, and what we try to really find in terms of a balance of power and finesse in Pinot Noir.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, one thing I will say about all the wines in this lineup is that not only do